How do we say goodbye? Well, we start with tools of the trade, a healthy box of Kleenex. Hopefully I won't need these. How do we say goodbye? These are the first 5 words that I put on a screen a few weeks ago, and then I simply sat there and stared at them. How do we say goodbye? I can tell stories. I can tell stories of the experience that I have had in this parish and the experiences that my family has had in this parish. I can tell you a story about Patty's first visit here to Saint Benedict, her first Mass in 2015. She came into the church and she was all alone. She sat by herself. And shortly after, a woman by the name of Heather came by and sat beside Patty. She introduced herself, and Patty said it was her first time here at the church, and they got to talking, she and Heather, and shortly after, some of Heather's friends had arrived for Mass and came over to Heather and said, "Why don't you come sit with us?" And Heather declined, and she said, "No, I think I'm going to sit with Patty. I'll stay here." And Patty has never forgotten Heather's generous show of inclusion and acceptance. She's never forgotten that first day when she first walked through these doors at Saint Benedict Parish 6 years ago. Patty has had wonderful experiences and life-giving relationships with many of the women here, many women who she calls sisters, particularly through the Aura ministry here at Saint Benedict Parish. I could tell you a story about a young boy named Patrick, 13 years old, who never liked youth group, right out of the gates. At our former parish, we had to basically drag him every week to youth group. But it was different here at Saint Benedict. He actually enjoyed going. And the former parish, there's no blame, no nothing. It was not something that he could really identify with. But the youth group at Saint Benedict was something where he felt fed, where he felt included and accepted, not only by the youth in our parish, but also the youth ministers who work so tirelessly and effortlessly for the sake of our youth, and all the volunteers that help through the St. Benedict Youth Program. So we are thankful for that. I remember one day when Patrick was sick, he just was not well, and he decided he was going to stay home from school, and that's fine. If you're not feeling well, you stay home. But it was also the same day that he had youth group that night. So we figured he was going to take a pass because he wasn't feeling well. But no, Patrick insisted on going to youth group because he wanted to be with his friends. He loved the music, he loved the companionship and the experiences that he could share with that group, and he just loved everything about how youth group just lifted him up and fed him as a young adult. I could tell you stories about Jenna, our daughter, who is now a nurse, and how as she worked her way through nursing school, was always supported and loved and adored by so many of the people here in St. Benedict Parish that are medical professionals. We are blessed in this parish to have so many nurses and doctors. And as Jenna struggled with the reality that our healthcare system is so secular nowadays and often runs counter to our Catholic faith, but the medical professionals, the nurses and the doctors in this parish helped her gain perspective as she worked her way through nursing school. Jen loves the liturgy. She loves the praise and worship music. She loves that. And she just loves how people just receive the Eucharist here with such gratefulness. That's never lost on her. I could tell you many stories about the wonderful men who I have been fortunate enough to be around and to work with and work beside, certainly Father Alex and Father Simon and Father James as well. I've been very blessed and very fortunate to work with such fine, holy men. And these two. Now, Father Alex, I don't know if he's ever seen this snapshot of himself. He grabbed my phone when we were out for dinner one time and took a whole bunch of selfies. So I knew about, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago, I hung on to this picture knowing one day I was going to be able to use this picture. So I don't know if he's ever seen this picture. So careful when you're taking selfies with someone else's phone. They may come back to you. In addition to these fine men that I've already mentioned, I've been able to experience other fine holy men who have come through the parish. As priest interns, Father Matthew Keshwa, Father Michael Leclerc, Father Jim O'Connor, who was with our parish, but he was here for a short time as an intern, Father John Farley, and deacons, Deacon Mark Simard, and many seminarians as well, like Isaac and Dan and Antoine, good and holy men who I've been blessed to serve alongside with. I've also finally been so grateful and appreciative to be at the 2 DR conferences that we held here in this church, in this parish, the 2 Divine Renovation conferences in 2016 and 2018. I remember being up on the altar in a sea of people that were here, people from all over the world, and I sat in that chair up there thinking, what an honor it is. I will miss many of the people here in this parish. I will miss parents. I will miss grandparents. You're all very special to me. I want you to know that. There's also something I will particularly miss about this parish, and that is this little church. I will miss this little church. It's usually down on the steps. I will miss, more importantly, not only the little church, but I will miss those who visit this little church. These little kids, as they all come up during Mass, during the offertory, they come up and they put money and change in this little church. And it's wonderful to see them as they all come forward, little kids, putting money in the little church. The funds that go into the church that are raised go to help our child sponsorship programs that we have around the world through Saint Benedict Parish. I will miss parents and I will miss grandparents, but I will particularly miss the kids. I will miss the knuckle bumps and the high fives and the hugs. I will miss that. Kids are very special. They are the lifeblood of our parish. We want to make sure we nurture our children. God has richly and abundantly blessed our 6 years here at Saint Benedict Parish. When I was assigned to the parish in 2015, never in my wildest dreams could I ever expect to be sent to a parish so alive. If there is another parish out there like this, I've never been to it. I don't know it. In our gospel today from John, we hear about how Jesus feeds the 5,000. He asks the question as he sees them coming towards him. He says, "Where are we to buy enough bread to feed all these people?" And Philip says 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. And Andrew says to Jesus, "There is a little boy here who has 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what are they among so many people?" And then Jesus asks the disciples to have everyone sit down. And he took the loaves and the fish. And after he gave thanks to his Father, he distributed them to those who were seated as much as they wanted. That's amazing. That is amazing. That is a miracle in itself. That Jesus feeds so many people with so little. But to me, that's not what strikes me about this gospel. It's not what strikes me about this story, although it is amazing, and don't get me wrong. But here's what strikes me about what Jesus does, because he says he knew what he was going to do. Jesus knew what he was going to do. Jesus knows everything. He knew how many people were there. He knew what it would take to feed 5,000 people. And yet, he fed 5,000 people and then demonstrated God's abundance because there was some left over. Our gospel says that they gathered them up from the fragments left by those who had eaten. They filled 12 baskets. Jesus not only gives them what they need, he gives them so much more. Our God is a God of abundance. Our God is a God of graciousness, of generosity. Jesus knew what he was going to do. He not only feeds them, but he shows them God's grace in an overabundance of food. God's grace is limitless in abundance. He not only gives us what we need, he gives us more than what we need. That is how I would describe our 6 years here at Saint Benedict. God's abundant grace. We have been fortunate, richly, richly blessed. God's abundant grace has been witnessed by me and my family here at this parish. I can never repay him, but I am thankful for the opportunities that I've been given in this parish. Saint Benedict is all I have ever known as a deacon. This was my first assignment. I remember in May of 2015 when I received a letter from Archbishop Mancini sending me here to this church, to this parish. Originally, it was only supposed to be 3 years. But God, in his infinite wisdom, in his abundance, has turned 3 years into 6 years. And I am grateful. So what will I take with me? I take with me the assurity and knowledge that Saint Benedict Parish is full of God's abundance, full of God's grace. We have witnessed a parish that is not only alive in its faith, but thriving in its faith. I praise God and thank God for the richness that is Saint Benedict Parish. And what do I leave with you? There's a personal message in our gospel for each one of us. The little boy had 5 loaves and 2 fish. This little person probably figured it's so inadequate among so many people. But God in his abundance, in his grace, takes that little boy's offering, his gift, and feeds his flock. And you may think that what you have to offer, like that little boy, is of little value. But I ask that you trust in God's abundance and trust in God's grace to take whatever it is you have to offer, whatever your 5 loaves and 2 fish are. Trust in God's abundance and grace so that God may use you and use your gift to feed his flock. Whatever you have to offer the church, God will use it abundantly. So how do we say goodbye? You know, working through this transition of Saint Benedict to Our Lady of Guadalupe and spending time with, again, in God's abundant grace, our second reading is from Ephesians. And it is a reminder to me, because I needed reminding, obviously, that I work for one church. I work for the Catholic Church. Ephesians and St. Paul says, there is one body, one Spirit, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all, through all, and in all. We are one. Whether at Saint Benedict Parish or Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, we are one. We all serve the one God, Father of all. So how do we say goodbye? We don't. I'd rather say, so long for now. May God bless you and keep you.